Hello, and welcome to another episode of Soft Girl Strong Mind. And today I want to touch on something I feel like not a lot of people talk about, and that is the disconnect between immigrant parents and kids who grew up in a completely different country as them. So my parents grew up in a little third world country called Guatemala, which is the little country right below Mexico. And obviously, I grew up in the United States, and there was a lot of disconnect and a lot of tension between my parents and me because we grew up in completely different worlds. So even though we lived in the same household, we have completely different realities. And because of that, a lot of problems or feelings that I was having growing up were things my parents couldn't understand. And it wasn't that they didn't care. It's just the problems I was having did not exist where they came from. For example, when I was struggling with something emotionally or socially, they would simply just say, well, someone has it worse, or at least you have food on your table, or at least you have a roof over your head, which is true, but that's also diminishing my problems and my experiences. So I started to grow up with this idea of my problems aren't real and I should be lucky to have the problems that I had. And because of that, I didn't talk to anyone about my problems and I just internalized everything. And the worst part was most of the time I wouldn't even deal with my problems alone. I would just ignore my problems because, like my parents said, someone has it worse and I should be lucky to have that problem in the first place. So I would just brush it off and kind of bottle it up. And it became very isolating because I was also the firstborn. So I didn't have anyone above me to talk to about these things. So when I saw friends or in movies or TV shows where kids go to their parents for everything, or they were very transparent with their parents, I was like, must be nice because my Hispanic parents could never be this understanding. And it took a long time to finally come to terms with the fact that only because other people have bigger problems than me, that does not mean my problems aren't real and that my problems don't matter. And I know my parents weren't trying to dismiss me. I really feel like they were coming from a place of just wanting us to be grateful for the things that they didn't have. But in doing so, they caused other trauma. For example, and I know this will resonate with other cultures too, but our parents made it a point to not waste any food and we had to finish every single grain of rice on our plate. Obviously, this comes from a place of like being grateful and, there's other kids who go hungry and there's other people who are starving. So you should be grateful to have, food on the table. But for my little sister, this caused a very unhealthy relationship with food. Listen, for me, I had no problem finishing every grain of rice because I was a fat ass. But my little sister, she's more petite and she's very, very skinny. So she gets full really, really fast. So when my parents would, serve her this big plate, she would eat half or maybe less than half and she would be full. And my parents would not let her get up from the table until she finished her food. And so she would sit alone in the dining table for like an hour, just sitting there because she can't eat anymore. She's like stuffed. But my parents won't let her leave the table until she finished. So unfortunately, my little sister developed an unhealthy relationship with food where she saw food as like a drag and as like this unpleasant experience. So that's what I mean by like they came from a good place wanting to teach us about gratitude and gratefulness, but in doing so they caused other traumas. And you could just imagine trying to explain to immigrant parents that come from a third world country that you don't want to eat anymore. So that's what I mean by there's like this disconnect and this misunderstanding between immigrant parents and kids that grew up in a different world. And that disconnect can be very lonely and very isolating. And that loneliness actually connects to another experience a lot of first generation kids go through, especially if you are the eldest daughter like I am. So, next episode, I want to talk about the pressure and struggles and trauma of being the firstborn, first generation daughter to immigrant parents.